Okay, everyone, it's 6:30, and we're going to start the presentation on the purchase of Potter's Resort. Welcome, and thank you everyone for being here this evening. We actually have our Zoom link, so you can say hello to Barbara Marshall. Hi, Barbara. And there's some other people coming in, which is great. Thank you to George for the setup and doing all of this and all the wonderful food and soup. Thank you. So I'm just going to go right into it, okay? Can you see me okay with the camera, George, if I stand here?
Yep.
For the Zoom? Okay.
Yep.
So as you know, in our slides, you're going to see this top material particles up there, and that's from the light bulb. We didn't realize it had gotten so bad, so we apologize. We have to buy a new light bulb for that. So here we are in the wonderful old Arts Center building. So there's probably many people in this room that know a lot more about the building than I do. The Arts Center has had 57 seasons now. So we'll go to the next slide. So when I started in the Arts Center, at the Arts Center in April 2022, I was trying to learn about all the different things that have happened at the Arts Center, all the different renovations. So luckily, no one really threw that much out. So in 1989, there was Kevin M. Moss. I don't know if anyone here remembers him. He did the consultant's recommendations for the Adirondack Lakes Center for the Arts. And this was for the expanded visual arts program. I believe this might have been paid for by NISCA, but this was a big study for the Arts Center. The building stayed the same after that study. In 1991, Babani and King came in with their architects from New York City, and they did a huge addition on the front. Everyone probably remembers there was a front porch there, and the architect was Pakistani, right? And he put a flat roof on the front, which has had problems since then. In 2004, there was an architect, James Vincent Chazek, if I pronounce his name? Chaika. Ellen was the director at that time, and it was a NIMAX circuit rider program, again funded by NISCA. And I think he did a study on 6 different art centers in the state of New York. More than that. I tried to find the report, but I found very little of the files. I actually called Ellen at one point too. I tried to find the architect. He's unfortunately passed away. I called his firm, trying to find the plans. They did not have them. They said everything was gone. That firm had dissolved. And I called NISCA. NISCA went and looked, and they could not find them. But there was, in the minutes, that this architect said that of all the art centers he was looking at, small art centers in the state of New York through this program, this one was kind of like in the worst condition, right? Yeah. So 2004? That was 2004. Okay? And this was the file. I have props. Okay. So, yeah. We have a couple of the drawings, right? We do, but that's it. Nothing as thorough as Babani and King architects. We have wonderful plans, really thorough, multiple copies of that edition that came on. Then you find in 2018 there was a building committee. It was, I believe, led by Artie Russell, and they got the help of Matthew Herf, who was an architect in Saratoga Springs. And again, the people in the room will probably remember this. There were community meetings. There was talk about what to do to the front of the building. That flat roof has really been leaking, and there's a lot of damage now. There has been insulation put in on this side of the building, and a fake wall was built on the second floor to hide all the damage on the front of the building. So like all this little patchwork that's going on. So Matthew Herf came up with plans to renovate the front of the building, okay? But he also wrote a letter in recommendations after talking to the community. He has a few different things here of what the community was looking for. Administrative office space, classrooms, workshop space, a shop for developing things for the theater program, performance space, multimedia, digital technology, gallery and workspaces, community kitchen, general gallery, exhibition space, an outdoor covered porch space, event space, retail space, and place for the community to have yoga and health. He talked about the existing facility. He said, I don't think this existing facility is particularly well equipped to meet this ambitious program. And ALCA will be best served by a new building. In addition to better accommodating the program, new construction would offer a number of advantages, and including the obvious things. But one of the things that he said is the opportunity to reinvigorate the brand with the excitement of a new building, which should stimulate both fundraising and attendance. Another key item he noticed was, I would still encourage exploring new construction as an option. I was struck by the quality of a number of the buildings in the neighborhood of the ALCA, but the center itself is not one of them. I think a new building could frankly be more respectful of the surrounding context than the current structure. I also am concerned about fundraising fatigue. I think it is easier to get people behind one larger project than behind several smaller ones, where it's hard for them to see where their donations are going. So the reason I'm bringing up all these studies and going into the background of before the purchase of Potters is so we have the opportunity to talk to the community about what the board looked at, the history of what was going on, and the many studies that have been done, and time goes on. So then we came, next slide. And that's what I'm saying, time goes on. The Art Center went on to still have wonderful programming, workshops, and the community engagement. And go on to the next slide. And that's Matt's letter, which I just read, parts of it, highlights, and then the next slide. So then we go into Martha Spears' feasibility study. This happened in 2019. And Martha, I believe the Art Center received a grant for this, and she interviewed approximately 40 members of the community. It was a pre-planning feasibility study after the building information that the board had gotten in the community from the architect Matthew Herf in Saratoga Springs. This pre-campaign planning feasibility study, number one, recommendations: raise the money, start an endowment, and tune up the building. Start here, set a private, quiet, time-bound, 3 to 5 years, initial private goal of $200,000 to be raised in pledges from a small group of people. Attempt to personally ask all those who participated in this study what you can raise in this quiet phase should be 60 to 80% of your total campaign. I suggest a simple, low-cost campaign without bells and whistles to reflect ALCA's lean financial status. Number 4, she goes on to communicate more, better transparency. And pretty much this is why the board wanted to bring back the Soup Social and do this presentation for the community. And for people that aren't here, they could zoom in and hear it. And we can answer questions and be transparent about the purchase. So next slide. So as I'm deep diving into this, I came across and found two really good reports. One is from the Rural Prosperity through the Arts and Creative Sector. It was created for the governors in the United States. And another study, Upstate's Creative Spark. And both of these studies, I've used a lot of the data for the grant applications because arts and cultural centers do so much for communities, as you can see about what's happening in this room right now, people coming together for a soup social. And especially for rural communities. And that is what has happened over the 57 years with this art center. Yes, there's been different directors. Yes, there's been different people on the board. We enjoyed one person, Roland Stearns, for 40 years as head of the board, and his daughter's here, Jane Hinckley. But they do a lot for the community and arts and cultural centers. So next slide, please. And this is just an example of that, people coming together in a workshop with the Arts Center. So, next slide. Here we are, April 22, that's when I started. We had a full season. Next slide. One of the big things that everyone talked to me about was the lost endowment. So, I was here, and I don't want to say I was on a listening tour, but a lot of people talked to me about the lost endowment, and that it was still something that was raw in the community, and people felt a sense of loss about it. So we have a deteriorating building, we're on a shoestring budget, the board is always working to try and keep it together, as well as we're a NISCA statewide community re-grant site, which is really big. We re-grant out to 4 counties, Hamilton, Essex, Franklin, and Clayton County, and we support artists. You cannot be a statewide community re-grant site unless you have an executive director or a co-direct, do a co-directorship. But you have to have a standing art center to do that. And this community has supported that for I don't know how many years. I think it started when Stephen was here, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, next slide. So, part of talking to the community was one of the first receptions for the classical concerts. Mark Chamberlain asked me, have you read Martha Spear's study? And I said, no, I didn't even know about it. So that got me into that. And then I saw Tony when I was out watering the flowers at the end of the season, I believe late August, beginning of September, and he talked to me about the endowment. He said, I want to lead on this. I really want to get the endowment going. I want to fundraise for it, and I want to get it to $1 million. I said, great. So next slide. You can't see her here, but over in the corner there is Kathleen Peartree. And I called up Joanna after I talked to Tony Zasla, and I said to Joanna, who would be a good person, another board member, to work with Tony? Tony is an emeritus on our board. And she said Kathleen Peartree. So we contacted Kathleen, and Kathleen was like, oh, okay. And so her and Tony started working on this. And they started talking to people sort of in a quiet phase. And if you're in a nonprofit, if you're doing a capital campaign, it starts in a quiet phase because the big donors are what funds a capital campaign. You have to get to approximately 80% of what your goal is before you go public. Small donations are wonderful, but in capital campaigns, you need those big donations to meet the goals. So next slide. Okay, so we have the building. I'm learning a lot about NISCA. We're gonna, I talked to the building committee, which is small at this point. I find these plans, and I find out they were community vetted, and I'm like, let's apply for the NISCA grant, capital grant, and let's apply. We're gonna have to match it, so we're gonna have to do some fundraising, but we'll get those renovations on the front of the building. George and I start contacting contractors. I'm diving into the NISCA application, capital grant application. It's very involved. And then the building committee comes back and says, wait, before we put all this effort into it, let's get a building condition report, because we don't really know what's going on, particularly in this building, and how sustainable it is going to be over time. That's okay. So we apply for a Preserve New York technical grant of $10,000 to have an architect come in and do a building condition report. Next one. We did not get it. So in the summer of 2023, I talked to Joanna Pine, and I'm like, how about we invite Erin Tobin from Adirondack Architectural Heritage to come look at the building, to find out if, you know, does this have any cultural significance? Would it qualify for historic preservation? Because there's money there and we could get grants. Next slide. Erin is in the center in the blue jacket. She's going to be speaking at our winter benefit. She was fantastic. She got here early. She came to a board meeting, but she got here early, went through the building, and was pretty much, this wouldn't qualify. But she said the building across the street probably would. That's been vacant for a long time. So in that, she talked to the board about the options, and she was very interested in the hamlet of Blue Mountain Lake to go through the process of possibly becoming a historic registered village. Okay, so next slide. Preservation League of New York comes out again with grant opportunities. This time they're funded by NISCA. So we apply for a $5,000 grant in the fall of 2023 for a limited building condition report. At that same time, I go to breakfast with Francie Armstrong, where Kathleen and Tony are talking to possible major donors, and as they go out and talk about the endowment to people and building it, everyone is saying, what about the building? What about the building? What about the building? So I'm at breakfast with Francie, and we're talking about all of this, and I mentioned to him, George Cortez and his wife Liz were talking about another property that was for sale, Blue Mountain Design in Blue Mountain Lake, and thinking about building past that, but winds up that that's rock behind that building, the old schoolhouse, and you can't build back there. But it has a super septic system. So all of a sudden, Francie goes, Potters. And I said, what? She said, Potters. And I said, she goes, they've got a big event hall. I said, I've never been in there. I said, really? And we just start talking about it, and she's like, it's fantastic, and it's right on the lake. I'm like, wow. So, next slide. She goes out, and she talks to Kathleen Peartree about it, who talks to Tony Zazzle about it, and we wind up talking to the board about it, and the board makes the decision, let's look at it. So we go and tour it, George, myself, and some other board members, and we feel that, yes, we can transition to that building. It was listed for $1,690,000. To knock down this building or renovate it would have been a much bigger lift, probably like $3 or $4 million to get this up to where it should be. Go back to, again, go to the board meeting. We talk about it, and the board says, let's go for it. So Tony and Kathleen start working in the quiet phase of a capital campaign, because remember, we don't know if we're going to be able to fundraise this money at this point, and we don't know if we're going to be able to do it. as well as the owners of Potter's Resort were very, as they should be, very attached to that property and their family business. So we didn't know if we were actually going to be able to negotiate to buy the property. It was for sale by owner. So at this time, we still are, it's up the end of this year, we received grant assistance, technical assistance for a year and a half from the Cloud Splitter Foundation. So I had help from a really experienced grant writer to help writing edit and go over these grants, and I had someone to talk to about it. So the first big grant we applied for and received was from Stewart Shops and the Dake Family Foundation. Stewart sent 2 of their employees here. They came and looked at this building, and then they went and looked at the outside of Potter's. We had lunch here in the front, and we applied to them for $100,000. It was the best message I ever got on my answering machine. Susan Dake called like a few days after they were here, and she says, "Oh, I just want to let you know we're going to fund your grant, $100,000. Just let me know when you need the money when you close." And I was like, yes! Because that gave us more stability if they believed in it, right? So then it started to roll. Charles Wood Foundation, we applied and we received a $25,000 award. We got the New York DEC Smart Growth Grant. Once we got that for 125, we got that award for 125,000. It gave us more words to use in the fundraising to the major donors. Like, wow, these people believe in this. And it started to take off. We wound up receiving 2 grants from the Cloud Splitter Foundation, the Vic Fund, and a small grant from Price Chopper. At the same time, people started to become sort of evangelized about this for the Arts Center. There was a huge reinvigoration for the people that were fundraising for this, and it caught on. We had family foundations that have donated, and private individuals in large amounts. And it really just took off. And again, you have to understand, we're still in the quiet phase. We didn't know if we were going to get there, and we were still negotiating with the sellers. And at this point, as time went on, next slide, we got the grant for Preserve New York for $5,000 for a limited building condition report on this. And the architect Randy Crawford came in and he came in April of this year and May to look at the building, and we received his report in July. So we were concurrently doing 2 different things at the same time because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to close on Potter's. But the board wanted to do the due diligence on this building. So we would have this and know about the infrastructure and what actually was going on at this time with the building. So next slide. And we closed on October 29th. We had a contract, and then we started calling in the pledges. A lot of these people, we asked them not to give us the money, just to pledge it if they said they wanted to contribute, because we weren't sure if this was going to all come together. So we were calling in the pledges at the end of September while we were still fundraising. So this went down to the wire in October. We had a very, I think I mentioned before, we had hired a lawyer at that point. So, but we were moving methodically towards the purchase. Okay, next slide. As we were fundraising for the building, we were asking people to pledge to the endowment. And we have up to almost $400,000 now in pledges for the endowment. And we have set up a restricted, designated fund at the Adirondack Foundation that is going to stay there for life. The board cannot take any of that money out of there, nor can the staff. that is going to put 4.25% or 4.5% into the Art Center every October and as it builds. The board is considering opening, should a donor want to open another endowment fund, we're considering doing that where the board might have more control over it in the case of an emergency. But because of what happened to the other endowment, this is why the board was very strong and supporters on setting up the first endowment this way. So it's locked in and it's safe. And that's that. So this was the community coming together for the Arts Center. And it really took off, I would say, in this past summer into the fall as more and more pledges came in and people started donating. So it really is a wonderful story. I know myself, I did try and talk to people when they were in the Arts Center about it, and people were skeptical if we were going to get there. But we all worked really hard at it and we got there. So we're really, really excited about the new space. Yeah, for the Arts Center. So does anyone have any questions?
I thought tonight there would be part of the presentation, the use of the building at Potters, how it's going to be divided into gallery space. My understanding, this was done so there would be more visiting artists, more classrooms.
Right.
When I went in there, I didn't really see the space telling me that. So I was hoping tonight we would see some of that.
Right. We could talk about that.
Would you repeat the question just so the people on the line can hear?
Oh, sure. The question was, they're wondering about the layout of the new facility and how that's going to work for workshops, for performances, and how that, and for the gallery. We actually we had a Zoom about the layout over this past Wednesday. And we're going to be regularly meeting about it. We're still trying to figure it out. But there's going to be gallery space. There's more space there than there is here for workshops. And we hope to bring back the pottery program and move the kiln over there. There is a covered porch there. There is the 2 garages. There is the space under the Brook House, which has a big utility sink. And there also is possibly in the green room, which is right off of the covered porch, that we could have workshops in there as well. There's a room that was a former bedroom that's on the first floor. If you walk into Potters or walk into our new art center, it's on the right. That is going to be converted into a boardroom and a workshop space. And there's going to be a flat screen TV on the wall, so the board can meet there and have Zooms, but it could fit 5 to 10 people for a workshop in there, and there is access to a sink there. Yeah.
And so is there a lot of costs related to this move, like heating system, insulation? That building is not insulated.
Well, we're talking about part of this, which I didn't bring up, is we had an engineer come before the board made this decision to move forward with fundraising and trying to purchase Potters. Peter Gutos, who's an engineer and property manager. He came and looked at this building, and he looked at Potters as well, and he recommended to the board that this was a good decision. I've talked to Peter Gutos about possibly insulating 1 or 2 rooms for the winter for the community, and maybe keeping 1 bathroom open so we can have programs through the winter, and he said yes, that can be done. You know, it's just right now we're focused on the transition and the move. We have to pack a lot. And we're probably going to close the Art Center, this building, down for January, February, and March, and then come back really strong in April, packing and moving. But Marty Evanoff and the History Committee has done so much work this past summer on the files and everything. She has led this tremendous effort that really a lot of that work on the office end is done. She packed up the office supplies upstairs in like one day with me. She's
Done
terrific.
an amazing job.
Yeah.
So in the spring, we're going to be reaching out to our community and having like a community weekend where we're trying to do the last minute tweaks of getting everything in place, getting it cleaned and ready to open, and ready for the season. So watch for that, because we're going to open back up in April, and we're going to be hitting the ground running to get everything over there. I mean, we have to move the Steinway, we have to move our ginormous copier upstairs that does a plethora of things, as well as just everything, our risers, our tables, our chairs. So we're going to be reaching out to everyone to have as many hands to help us get through that transition into the new building. And another thing I wanted to add, and I don't know if you were planning on saying this or not, but there were a few professionals out there who said there was no way we would raise this money for 5 years. And we did it in under a year. So thank you to our supporters and to Jean Marie for writing a ton of grants.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, my father died in the middle of us calling in the pledges in September, so it was really hard for me. But yeah, and the board has been terrific through this process and the support. It's a big move, and it's an exciting move. And I know it's change, which might be hard for some people, but a decision had to be made. So, yeah, and we're going to be on the lake.
So what plans do you have for going forward? There's the tap room there, there's rooms to be rented. Are you looking at utilizing those things going forward, or are you going to be changing some things?
The tap room, we're in discussion right now with 2 different breweries about coming in. It's the intent of the board to put a tap room in there, whether it's Strong Rope or another one. So we'll see.
We'd ideally like to keep it as local as possible.
Yeah.
We want to support the people who are supporting us, right? So it's not that we didn't like Strong Rope or that we don't want Strong Rope. I don't want anybody to get a bad vibe about that. It's that I just feel like we all just feel it's really important to support the people who support you. And so it makes the most sense to us to try to gain someone within our parameters to be in that space for us, because we do think that it's a great place for people to come and socialize. It also gains us extra exposure. People could be having their drink and notice, oh, look what's on the sandwich board for tonight or tomorrow night. So it's a win-win all the way around.
I think when people drive by too and they see folks sitting out front, it draws people in.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Right.
Yeah, and the thought of having like artisan residency, how exciting is that? And another piece was the expense every year of having to rent a place on Durant for all of our theaters and our performer to stay when they were here for the summer. We don't have to do that anymore. We have the dorm house above the garages. We've kind of named it the dorm house now instead of the Sailor's old residential space, to put those people there. And then we also still have the cabins. And I will say, we are very excited to say that we are going to have our first wedding there in August. It's going to be Jane's daughter. So that is super exciting. It's our first experience of us having a community center. We wanted to also be that for people, right? To have a baby shower or have a wedding. We want our community to see it as that, as well as being the art center.
Right. I think we had 3 private family events here this past season. People probably don't know that, and the board has supported that, and we've talked about it at board meetings, and that was also a big part of the board decision going there, is because we wanted that, we saw that space as accessible for the community and families to have events there. We'd love to try and work it out. Pat Benton is the chair of our cabin and hospitality committee, so she is working out how we're going to work the cabins and the rates, and we all have full confidence in Pat because she worked, she transformed work, was at the Hedges, so she knows what she's doing. So, right, yeah, we have Go ahead, Ellen.
No, I just wondered if you could list the current board members and the current committees and those members.
Right here.
You keep mentioning.
I believe we have 13 committees now. We have a lot of committees for this transition. So what time is it? Are we going to go into the annual meeting?
7:07.
Yeah, we should go into the annual meeting. So any other questions about the building? Okay.
Yes, I feel, oh,
No, you go
No, you
ahead.
go
You
ahead.
start, go ahead. No,
no, you know I've supported this, and I told you, but I'm very concerned, and I talked to one board member and one person who was really involved with fundraising about this building. And I was told that the board was going to treat it with great sensitivity in terms of selling it. The next thing I know, last week, there's a sign for sale commercial. I'm very concerned about what happens to this property. How it relates to the community and to the neighbors. It is sold commercially, but across the street, there's residents. Next door, there's a residence next door. My house is behind. The inn is next door, which needs sensitivity in terms of who buys this building. Sherry, who's on the board, or no, she's former board member, is across the street.
Sherry's back on the board now, Sherry
She's
Nemmers.
across the street.
Right.
So it really is a residential community, and that is a concern to me. So is the board going to?
How is it, I mean, the zoning is, it can be commercial, right? That's a zoning
I
issue
know,
with
but is the
Indian
board
Lake.
going to have any sensitivity in terms of who buys it? Do we have a welding studio coming in, so the noise and the dirt and everything? I mean, you don't know who's going to buy this. Is the board sensitive to those concerns?
The board is sensitive to all those concerns. This
I'd
is,
hate to start this art center and have to move, depending on who buys this building.
right, but
And
it's
maybe-
property and it's real estate, right? Let's
Yeah,
be
right.
honest that this is prime real estate with a lake view in Blue Mountain Lake. Blue Mountain Lake
I
has
wish
some really beautiful properties
I know.
surrounding this
Did the
building.
board think at all about dealing with the Adirondack Foundation or the Adirondack Forest Allowance? This could be housing for middle-income people. When we started this art center, there was an apartment upstairs.
Right.
So the Northern Alliance actually comes and evaluates if it is indeed a building that can be
Right.
renovated. Has the board thought of those kind of things? I know it's best.
The board would be very,
but,
very happy to talk to any organization whose mission is in housing.
Terrific, I've already talked with them.
I mean, we've
Right.
had a
If
few
you could
people.
bring that forward, if any organization that does housing would like to bring that forward to the board, they would be very happy to look at it. One of the things that everyone needs to know is the intent for the sale of this building, the proceeds are going into the endowment.
Right, no, I know.
And that we are doing that, the board has made that decision, and some of the supporters, because of what happened to the past endowment. It's very important to the board to support the endowment and to do that for the greater community. And that is the intent of the sale of this building and where that money is going to go.
I guess
Yeah.
that was my question, the endowment money that you have there, is that projected as part of the sale of this building? or
No.
No, that is separate.
Those are pledges that are standing right now.
I was going to ask the same question Sheila did. I personally feel like this building has such meaning to the Blue Mountain community, and for the board not to take an opportunity, maybe while the building is for sale, to really look at other avenues for how this building could serve the community in a new form with housing or other types of retail that might benefit the art center with funding or rentals. It seems like a shame not to take some time to see if there's a win-win for everybody in here, because we know that one of the major issues of living in the Adirondacks and Blue Mountain Lake is that there's no affordable housing for people who are living here year-round. So to have a building that doesn't have a mortgage, that has served the community well, and not to kind of take some time to at least think through that process a little bit more. I certainly feel very doubtful that it's going to get the kind of money that is being asked for in the sale price. So, you know, I appreciate that you guys are willing to listen, because I do think there are a lot of people in town who are concerned of just selling this to anyone. So.
People have come to us about affordable housing. And our response to them has been, if you have someone in mind, or if you know a group who wants to spearhead working forward with that, come to us. But it is not our mission to be trying to do that on top of what we're trying to do right now. And the board felt really strongly that it is our fiduciary responsibility to continue to build that endowment in order for us to have the sustainability in this elevated location that we're going to be at. The other piece that I think of, and I mentioned this before to someone, is that if you put affordable housing here, this is a food desert. I mean, you all know you have to travel to get that food. You have to travel to get to your doctors. You have to travel to get to your prescriptions. I personally don't know how affordable housing would be cohesive in this area specifically. I'm not saying that we don't need it, we absolutely need it. But I will say that if we have said a time and time again to anybody who's approached us, if you have someone in mind, please come talk to us about it. But our fiduciary responsibility is to keep this moving
It's to the
forward.
Arts Center. I mean, that's the mission of the Arts Center, is arts and culture. I actually was at Camp Finance with New York Council of Nonprofits this past fall, and I was sitting with housing people in the state of New York. We're talking people that lead nonprofits for housing. And I talked to them about this because we've had some people ask. And I just asked because way back when, I've worked in a homeless shelter, believe it or not, and I know what housing means to people of medium and low income. I'm a medium income person myself, and I can't find a place to live here, right? I live in Minerva. But I asked because I also have my master's in public policy, so I've looked at these things, and I've worked for nonprofits. And I asked them, basically, when you're looking at this kind of housing, don't you need to put it near resources so people can walk to places? You'll see these kind of, affordable housing where you can walk to a grocery store and where you can, get other help, mental health resources and things like that, go to the doctor. It's hard. Hamilton County, I don't know, probably everyone knows this, has the lowest population of any county east of the Mississippi in the United States. This is an extremely rural county. So, I mean, it would be great if one of the organizations in the Adirondacks or outside in the state of New York approached the board and the Arts Center about putting housing here. But we're not a facilitator of housing, we're an arts center. And this wasn't easy. And you could see through the process of all the different studies that have happened and the building condition, right? Part of the building condition is part of the front of the building is kind of collapsing. So decisions had to be made. Yeah.
We did not expect for us to raise it this quickly either. So if things had gone more slowly, there may have been more time for people to reach out to us about their thoughts and ideas, or groups that would be interested in what they see this building becoming. But like I said, this happened in under a year, and we have so many committees. We have fundraiser committees, we have program committees, we have our finance committee who works tirelessly alongside Jean Marie. And we've grown from 9 board members to 18 board members. Granted, some have returned from the emeriti status. So we've all been cognizant of some of your thoughts and views, but the decisions had to be made. And like I said, that fiduciary responsibility is huge. We have a lot of supporters who've put in lots of money, and we have to answer to them and have them trust that we're going to make sure that we have that sustainability money. And so having $400,000 in there now, and whatever we get for this building is going to be a nice start for that endowment. And you need more staff, and there's more moving parts. So general operating is also, something that we need to look at. that has grown along with the elevation of this new location. So we're not insensitive, so I hope you don't see us as sensitive. Those things were
Right.
all thought about, absolutely. Not one of us didn't think about it. So I hope that that helps a little bit. I know it's probably not the answer you want, but I hope that you understand the situation that we've been in.
Right, and if someone in the community can do this research and find a housing organization that wants to talk to the board about this building, we would love for that to happen.
Absolutely.
I guess that's the original question, is that we don't have the resources to become a housing nonprofit. We don't. That's not our mission. So, but if someone else wants to come to us with that idea, the board would love that.
Great.
Okay? Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Yes, Andy?
I'm not hugely familiar with what an endowment fund is. What do the funds in there get used for?
So
Peter
how,
Gibson is on our board and is a finance person.
you feeling brave? You want to
You want to
answer?
take that on?
Well, there are different types of endowments, but the endowment that we currently have, the goal of it is to build it up, and then there's a certain percentage of the principal that would be distributed to the organization on an annual basis to be used for operating funds. So the goal is to build up the endowment as high as we can, so that on an annual basis it kicks off more money to us that we can use for operating capital.
And the board went around and around about different organizations. Who should we put it with, right? And we talked with different organizations. And Callie Brooks came here and talked to a group of us and explained. And one of the nice benefits to it, which I think happen with other organizations as well, is that the Adirondack Foundation has a plethora of people that entrust their money there, and they designate it to different places. So they're able to help draw that to us, to help us also. So that was another reason why we wanted to put some of our money there.
The Adirondack Foundation gives back, just on a personal note, to the school all the time.
Yes.
They give us
Right.
thousands of dollars every year to take our kids to Montreal. It's an organization that puts money back into the Adirondacks, which is.
And,
Right.
and a lot of our donors felt very comfortable with it being with the Adirondack Foundation. So that was another piece that we had to consider as well. And like Jean Marie spoke about, we may have another one that we have that's a little more laxed to draw from, like people have as in reserves for their businesses, right? They might have a reserve set aside for emergencies and things. And for us, with things like when our septic went and we had to spend this money, and here we've got this balanced budget on a nonprofit, we have no money, right? So, you know, having another endowment type setup that has some strict rules to it, and it's in the policy, right, in our bylaws, but it's there for us to draw from for those emergencies only, not to be spent frivolously. So that is why we talked about this other piece of an endowment that would be a little more flexible, because the Adirondack Foundation, the money goes in and it's a very strict amount that comes back out to us.
And you have a separate cash reserve.
Exactly, it would be like a cash reserve, but it would have restrictions to it, correct?
Board restricted.
Absolutely.
Board restricted,
Yes.
right?
Correct, thank you,
Board
that's the best way to put it, yes. Thank you for helping me find the words tonight.
I just have one more quick question. I guess I'm a little curious to know, it seems like there's a lot more work to do at the new building with the housing and the pub that you'll be leasing, and what the plan is to create the programming to support all of those new roles and people who will be needed to kind of manage all of those different components. Because it seems like there's a lot more to manage.
Yes, and we've been working on that. So people, like we only have a few people who are seasonal year-round right now. Others are here just for the summers, right? They get employed for just the summers, but we are clearly going to be implementing some of our staff to stay on year-round to help with all of those components that you're talking about. But we also have the income coming in for, you know, the lease of the pub, the rental of the cabins, the community events like a wedding. You know, we'll have our gift shop as always, and then we have this robust programming that we put together. So, and we're gonna continue to grant write as well. But yes, we have a lot more moving parts. And that's the other nice piece that I feel good about, and I think the board feels good about, is that it's an opportunity to add to some employment here, because we need more people. So we're employing more staff.
Right, and we did apply for a North Country Regional Economic Development Committee grant, which we did not get. But one of the things in those 2 studies I showed you, and in the Regional Economic Development Committee, is arts and cultural centers drive street traffic, and they draw people in. So it helps businesses, it helps jobs, and it helps housing. You know, it brings up and lifts up a community. It's hard to define with statistics, especially in a rural community, but that kind of is what happens. So keeping the Arts Center here is wonderful for Blue Mountain Lake. And that's something I didn't touch on, because part of what I listened to and asked questions to people in the past 2 years since I've been here is one of the hard questions: should the Arts Center exist? And I know the Arts Center went through a process like that before. Should it be merged into the Adirondack experience? And I hadn't had one person that said that should happen. And I know it's a question that has come up in the past. Everybody was like, no way. The Arts Center does so much, is a different space for the community as opposed to the Adirondack experience, and it needs to exist as, you know, as the community center, Arts Center it is for the community. So, and the board really has that in mind, you know, to expand the community service part as well as the arts at the new space. But like Joanna said, it's not easy.
It's
And,
not.
you only can do it with everyone's support, so thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can reach out to any one of the board members, or Jean Marie, George. I mean, anything that comes to mind after tonight. You know, we're all about the transparency. So, and that's how we are as a board, together with the staff as well. And so, if you have a question later on that you think of, don't hesitate to reach out. We have made sure to be diligent about everything that we've done and hire the professionals to help us do the things that aren't in our wheelhouse, so that we did this mindfully and tactfully. I can tell you who all the board members are.
So are we done? Are there any other questions on the building purchase? Are we good? Okay. Hello to everyone on Zoom. Okay. So you want to go into the annual meeting?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that we start with who's on the board,
Okay.
and we can go from there. So I don't know, for anybody who might not know who I am, I'm Joanna Pine. I've been a volunteer since 1998. I moved here in 93 from Vermont. I have been president of the board since 2015. Roland had stepped down and Jamie Strader stepped in. And sure, if that helps people hear me. So Jamie Strader stepped in when Roland left, and then we needed an interim director. And so Jamie was kind enough to step down from the board and become our interim director. And I had just become VP, and she looked at me and she's like, so natural progression. You're gonna go from being the VP to the president. And I was like, oh my God. So here I am since 2015, going through this roller coaster. But it has been my passion, and I've never wavered on what I think of this art center and where I think it should be. And I love everyone who comes through the doors here. And so our current board is myself, Mary Leach is VP, Deb Marriott, who is here tonight, she is our secretary. Todd Friebel is our treasurer. He is up at the museum. I think he was working some extra time tonight. Francis Armstrong just returned from Emerita status, as well as Pat Benton. Monica Bills, Karen Butters, Mike Corey, Karen Kirkham, Kathleen Peartree, Artie Russell, who returned from Emerita status, Doug Stenson, who is here tonight, Sally Coney Wheeler, Mark Chamberlain, Sherry Numbers, Peter Gibson, who is here tonight as well, and Audrey Patron Peartree. In our trustee emeriti, I have Donna Cole, who is here tonight, Jamie Strader and Tony Zazala, And for our advisory board that we were so fortunate to get when we started this process is Peter Gutos, Cheryl Smith, Peter Gibson, and Sally Coney Wheeler. And we have, you know, a lot of different, like Jean Marie was talking about, a lot of different committees. And so if there's a committee that you feel that you have the wheelhouse for and you're interested in participating, we are open to that, so just reach out. Jean Marie, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
Me, no.
Okay. I don't have a lot of board members here tonight, so I can open up questions for anyone who has any.
May I say a word?
You sure can.
As a new board member, I'm inspired by what has taken place here in this tiny little hamlet. And I'm inspired by the deftness and abilities of Jean Marie and the rest of the board and all that they've solicited. I know that I've worked with Sheila this past year with the first auction that has happened since COVID that happened here in this room. And certainly we intend to have that auction happen again this coming year at Potter's. So and Sherry Nemmers, I can see her name on the screen over there, will be the co-chair along with me. And I'll ask of those that are online at this point in time or here in the room to consider donating to the auction, something they may have, whether it be tangible or intangible. Chef, if you'd like to donate something from your wonderful restaurant around the corner, we won't turn that down. Your wonderful food and hospitality is greatly appreciated. But I'd certainly like to encourage all of you to think about who you know and who can give to that auction component, which this past year was about $14,000 in realized dollars. And it doesn't sound like a lot considering the cost of what it costs for us to acquire Potter's, but every dollar and cent is carefully spent here. And that's been my experience. So for those that you know that are either here seasonally or otherwise, I'd like to solicit all of you at this time to consider donating generously to the auction in one form or another.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
Yeah, so, you know, and our programming, our fundraisers we're still going to have, and we're going to do the July auction, and we're going to have our winter benefit at Middlebrook, and we're going to have our Great Arts benefit, and it's going to be at our new location because it's great. And, you know, we have other, you know, little fundraisers here and there, and we're always looking for ideas on that as well. So please share your thoughts and let us know if you come up with something great that would help us to raise the funds in fundraising. Our finance committee meets the first week on a Wednesday every month, and then we meet the following Wednesday on our board meetings. And then we have our programming committees and our fundraising committees and everybody else that is part of committees to work really hard to make sure that everything we do is done well and that we safeguard our finances. The finance committee works really hard every month to make sure we're doing everything right. Anything else? Does anybody have any other questions?
Joanna, can I just
Yes.
say something about programming, because
Yes, you can.
someone had asked about,
You don't need that? Okay.
yeah, someone had asked about programming at the new space, and that has been a primary subject on all of our brains. We've been working hard at it. I want to reassure everyone that we will continue our theater festival. We'll have 3 productions that we're planning right now, and we will have next year. We have our weekend series concerts, which will be happening in the new space. Most of those have been scheduled and booked, and you know, we're still filling in a few places. We will have return our Tuesdays at the AC, which will feature locally based and locally connected performers on Tuesdays. And then, as for other programming, we're planning on bringing back our lecture series. We have a whole group of new, fresh folks involved, new thoughts, new ideas for programming that runs the gamut. It in terms of workshops, in terms of kids programming. So a lot of exciting ideas and a lot of exciting activities are planned for next year. And I know there was a, the question was kind of, how will that help with the, supporting this new space, right? Financially, obviously. So, there's always been that financial aspect of programming, our ticketing, and what we charge for workshops, that kind of thing. There is the general consensus and excitement that our new space, where it is and what it is, and how visible it is going to draw more people for all of our programming, for all of our performances, for all of our workshops. The high visibility is going to be key for that. So I just wanted to let everybody know that's what we're talking about. That's what we're really working on right now. Yes.
I remember when there used to be dark room upstairs at
Okay.
here in the building.
Yep. There are some of those kinds of things.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
Christmas. Thanks for coming.
Great meeting, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of activities that used to happen here. We've looked around, we've been exploring this space, and there are some things that are not there anymore, some things that are. Activities like photography, activities like pottery, textile, crafts, vocational crafts, woodworking, metalworking. These are all on the table. These are all activities that we're talking about and adding as soon as next summer, next season. So, yeah, all of that is on, and moving, I think it was mentioned, we've got a couple of kilns out here, one smaller one inside and the big one out back, and so, we're going to be exploring how to be transferring all of that over to our new wonderful space.
And as you all know, George has worked really hard year after year to get our programming together, and it's just amazing. Every year it just gets better and better. So thank you to George for that as well.
I just want to comment, you've done a great job
Oh, thank you.
programming. Also, are you doing all of the online stuff?
You mean currently?
No, when
All of
we get
this?
the Art Center news, do you do that? That's really very well done.
And yes, and we are going to be
That's very
continuing.
well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that's something we'll continue to do. We videotape everything or most everything, what we're allowed to during our season, and then we have our Back in Blue online series.
Yeah.
So during the off season, generally that's my main activity is the video production for that, and that's all on our YouTube channel. And so that's something I'll be kind of squeezing in this off season while we're planning the move as well. But this year, for example, we had our three theater festival productions, all three of which we can put online because we have the rights to all of them. Gilbert and Sullivan aren't going to complain about us videotaping Pinafore, and we worked with the wonderful playwright Fred Glover and did his play The Cure, and the Shakespeare. I think Shakespeare's okay with us taping his stuff as well. So so that's all, and we're going to be announcing the lineup of that for the off season, and continue to do that. Try to connect. That's been I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but I mean that's kind of an ongoing kind of thing with a lot of arts organizations. For a while, it was really, streaming things was a really hot thing. Zoom meetings are still a thing. Who knew that would still be a thing? This 3 years after COVID, but so we continue to try to maintain that connection with folks that way, virtually, as well as with live performance. Yes,
Are you guys planning on doing like an open house and like a party and congratulate yourselves for
yes. we
doing
are.
this uphill climb what you guys
Yeah.
did?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Bob. We are going to have a ribbon cutting. It's going to be in the beginning of June. What's the date, Jean? Like
June 7th.
7th. We're hoping it's going to be a big hit and a lot of people will show up and we'll have a nice big party to celebrate our
Awesome.
opening of our new space. While George was talking and I was looking at Sheila, it made me think of one other thing I wanted to mention. We still have our educational charter. I know that we don't do preschool here anymore, but we have held on to that. And that's thanks to Sheila and Jim for being so diligent about getting it all those years ago. And we are collaborating with Indian Lake Central School's summer program to get the kids to come here this year, at least twice, if she can make it work, the camp counselor there. So George has been in collaboration with her on that. And, you know, we hope to continue to do that with surrounding schools as the years go by. We'll continue to build on that because we want to revive that educational charter in some way. So I just want to, and I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We just felt it was really important to educate the community on where we're at and how we got here and how quick it was, and just let you understand how we have been running since last fall. And we look forward to working with you and seeing you at our performances and volunteering and coming together as a community to help us get ready for the season. So thank you so much for that and for being here tonight. That's all I have, unless somebody else has questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Think of the hot air next to you.
Well, it's about time we tell you that.
sit up on one of those.
I've been meaning to tell you that for a long time. Since you brought it up.
That's very healthy. That's very healthy. This can happen.
Little competition's good.
Yeah, that's some good swag.
You disappear.
Right,
Conference call within a conference call.
That takes years to get accomplished. Yeah, well, hopefully you have a great
George did a great job.
I never get to sit down and listen to